again, everyone. It is 5 o'clock here in New York. I'm Alicia Menendez in for Nicole Wallace. An incredible scene in the nation's capital this week when a crowd of residents drove away about a dozen ICE agents who were stationed at the Columbia Heights metro station. It is just one of the many scenes that show that Americans are not on board with Donald Trump's immigration crackdowns, which oftentimes are turning violent. That violence on display this morning in that same D.C. neighborhood when ICE agents surrounded a car, shattered the windows to arrest the two men inside.
ICE go home! 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 What are you guys doing?
These arrests, they are part of a show of force, and they are happening everywhere, even outside of schools. Yesterday in Encinitas, California, a father was detained after dropping his kid off in the morning at Parkdale Elementary School. The superintendent alerting the school community that, quote, this incident was witnessed by family, community members, staff, and students, causing fear and trauma across our district. The fear instilled across the country, it shows no signs of slowing down, with brand new reporting in the New York Times showing that deportation numbers are reaching new highs because of this surge in arrests. The New York Times adds in that reporting, quote, with an infusion of cash from Mr. Trump's domestic policy bill signed in July, ICE appears poised to scale its operations even further. Faced with backlash over these aggressive arrests, what you just saw in D.C., the Trump administration continues to double down, claiming that they are going after the worst of the worst. But according to the New York Times, quote, almost all of the increase in arrests has been of people without any prior criminal convictions. And that is where we start this hour with Vice President for Immigration Policy and Campaigns at Forward U.S., Andrea Flores is here, plus pollster and president of Brilliant Corners Research, MSNBC political analyst Cornell Belcher. And with me at the table, senior national and political correspondent for MSNBC, Jacob Sobroff. Jacob, I feel like we need a reset. What was the promise from the Trump administration? And what is it that we are actually watching?
I find it so nuts, frankly, that they continue to talk about that they're going after the worst of the worst. I just saw another post about it on, I think, DHS's social media today, because that actually is never what they promised. They promised the largest mass deportation campaign in the history of the United States of America. I appeared on this broadcast and others across this network from the floor of the Republican convention as thousands and thousands of people held up those signs that said mass deportation now. Yep. It was extraordinary to be there and see that in such a celebratory party-like atmosphere when what they literally were promising was ripping apart the country, deporting millions of people, literally the fabric of the United States of America. And when you watch those videos and you see what is playing out from quite literally coast to coast, from Home Depot parking lots today to streets like you're looking at in Washington, D.C., to the courthouse, 26 Federal Plaza here in New York. I just reposted, I've been trying to do this as much as I can, a video I saw from this morning at 26 Federal Plaza that was yet another family separation. And again, I always want to qualify. We don't know the specifics of these stories when they happen until we're able to vet each and every one of them. But the New York Times published that data today, that the vast majority of the increase in the deportations modeled after the 1954 Dwight D. Eisenhower program with that racist name that deported 1 million Mexicans and some Mexican Americans. So Americans as well were deported. That's the model for the program. They're ripping families apart. It's not family separation at the border. It's family separation in the interior, and it's playing out every single day all across the country. This is what they promised. This is what they're doing. But what I don't think they anticipated is that it's not, these are not just activists that are standing out there with phones. Everyday Americans are seeing this happen every single day, and they're outraged by it. And I think that will only continue to grow.
Okay, how do they not anticipate that, Andrea Flores? Because you and I both recall during Trump separation, family separation 1.0, it was suburban moms, some of them avowedly apolitical, who said, I cannot believe this is happening in my country. In that child, I see my own child. Moms don't want to see ICE agents showing up at schools at churches. There used to be sensitive areas where they were not allowed. The fact that they now feel emboldened, feel as though they can show up in places where they're not just traumatizing the person they are taken into custody and their loved ones, they are traumatizing entire communities.
I think a lot of people, public leaders especially, misread the 2024 election. And there was this argument that immigration writ large was unpopular. And so you saw a lot of analysts say, well, people want mass deportations. The majority of people want mass deportations. But I think a lot of public leaders really dropped the ball because this is what they mean. It means you need to go into every community. You need to go into schools. You need to go into healthcare facilities. You need to go in places of worship. That is what mass deportations have always meant. But when people said, well, President Biden lost the election in part due to the border and immigration, you are missing a huge piece of what immigration means in the United States, which is all of these essential community members going about their lives and being violently arrested on the job, at school, at church. It's really disturbing, and it's important now that leaders step up and explain what's happening.
I think it is so telling, Cornel, that they feel so emboldened, that they know they need to operate so quickly. And the fact that Americans are seeing these images, seeing these videos, and they're paying attention. There was new polling this week. It shows just 43% of Americans approve of Trump's immigration policies. I wonder, in your own focus groups, in your own polling, if you can identify the nuance of what it is that folks are seeing that is not sitting the right way with them.
Well, look, I think these numbers are a big deal because let's level set for our viewers here. You know, Trump and Republicans overall have had huge advantages on immigration. It has been a winning issue for them, and I've seen polling numbers where now it's even more underwater. His job on immigration is even more underwater than that, and we've seen in polling where Trump's attacks on immigration has actually made more Americans positive about immigrations and immigrants than we've seen in quite some time. So it seems to be backfiring at a broader level. But I will tell you, I was, behind Folks Group Glass 2 days ago with some Trump supporters from the last election, and I would like to say that they have remorse, but they don't. Right? They have no problem with what he's doing around immigration, around tariffs, around any of this stuff. And to a certain extent, they think he's keeping his promises. You know, he made these promises about mass deportation. He made these promises about tariffs, and they believe he's keeping his promises. Now, the question is, and I do think this is a base play because Republicans are much better at feeding their base and keeping their base energized than I think Democrats are. And this does not seem to be moving or turning off Trump's core base that much. But I do think when you're looking at the midterms, I do think, the moderate swath of middle Americans see these images and I hope they're saying, this is not what we signed up for. This is not who we are.
Well, I mean, there's where the rubber hits the road, Jacob, with voters, and then there's where it hits the road with the actual municipal leaders, county leaders who have to implement these policies. You have New York City Mayor Eric Adams this week asking the Trump administration to stop these arrests in the New York immigration courts, which you've been reporting from. So
Eric Adams is this weird, strange bedfellow of President Trump because of his own legal problems, but even he cannot afford to avoid any longer the family separations that are happening on a daily basis here in Lower Manhattan. The images, and I would recommend we should go together. I mean, Nicole, I know, wants to go as well. Everyone should go down there, just like we did for the Trump trial, to see what it looks like as these families are being ripped apart from one another, as masked agents are standing in the hallways, literally taking people out. They're trying to do the right thing by showing up to their immigration hearings. Many of them have ongoing asylum cases. Many of them are being told to come back by a judge for future hearings, whether it's in a month or 2 months or a year or 2 years. And these agents are ripping them out of the hallways and putting them into a secretive room on one of the floors in the detention centers and then being immediately deported. Karen Bass said something, the mayor of Los Angeles, as those raids started in L.A. at the beginning of the summer. This is a petri dish, I'm paraphrasing, but this is basically coming to a city near you. And Eric Adams has made the choice now to speak out against the Trump administration and what they're doing here in the courthouses in Lower Manhattan. I promise you, it's not just going to be in Miami and in Los Angeles and in Washington, D.C. with $175 billion or whatever the number is that they got at ICE, this is coming to communities all across America with Democratic and Republican mayors. And just like there's no Democratic and Republican way to take out the trash, as LaGuardia famously said about what goes on in New York, there is not a particular Democratic or Republican way to deal with your own citizens, even if they're undocumented, being ripped out of your communities and destroying the way of life all across the United States of America. Everyone is going to be faced with this on all levels of government.